Very well, thank you. Happy to be here.
Awesome, awesome. So yeah, I've found you from Podmatch and just saw the things that you do or been doing, and I was interested to talk to you. So I guess just kind of go into what you do and how you kind of got into it.
Sure, sure. I describe myself. I have in my email signature line that I'm a multi-potentialite. And by that, I just mean I have a multitude of very diverse interests, both personally and professionally. So I'm a 20 plus year like corporate executive, stepped into my first executive role at a very young age, at just 24 in the world of B2B professional services, primarily outsourcing work at that point, and have stayed in that world ever since, initially for a bunch of private companies, but the last 10 or 15 have been for really, really large, like Fortune 100 companies like IBM, Accenture, or American Express. I also sit on multiple boards. I've built and bought businesses, and I'm a professional public speaker and author. And on the personal side, I'm a wife, a mother of two, a fitness fanatic, a foodie, a wine lover, music lover. There you go.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean those are all things that I would think people who are in your type of position would be into, like even on the personal side. You know, we all, if you're an executive at a company, like you kind of want to be that kind of speaker. Like they say, even like the president, you know, he is the chief, you know, he's the executive of our country, and they say some of the best presidents are some of the best speakers. So that's a good trait to have. So do you feel like that's something that you had to develop, or did you just natural born, hey, I can talk?
Uh, I think it's a little bit of both. I think there's, innately something in my DNA, but I also think I've evolved to become a better speaker through, quite honestly, like practice. I couldn't even count how many stages, both physical and virtual, that I have stood on. But what did help is I was an actor in my youth. So I
Hmm.
was very confident being on stages and, projecting and speaking to large audiences. Well, actually, the bigger leap I needed to make is when I started speaking for business and then subsequently speaking on at a little bit more personal level because I no longer was playing a character, right? This is Victoria standing on stage. And so there were way more butterflies almost initially when doing that, even though I'd performed, in a theater show for thousands. And that was just getting comfortable with pulling the mask down and standing up on stage. So I don't speak on things that I don't know because I don't. And depending on this on the speech, but generally I'm not reading things, and so I need to innately know what it is I'm going to be talking about and feel confident to engage with the audience. And I shifted maybe 10 years ago to engaging a little bit more of the personal side into my talks. So some of the adversity that I've overcome. And that was even more powerful in the way in which I engaged with audiences and made it even easier, quite frankly, to do it.
So something that I've picked up with talking to people who are kind of like in your position is like them having to turn on and off being as like a managerial person, and then just like them as a human being. And then some people are just, they're the same, like no matter what, they're just the same person. And there's this rap lyric that I love because it made me, I never really thought about it like this rapper said, you're like Denzel in action, you're probably a good guy, but we only see you acting. So it's like a lot of people see, you know, somebody like a Will Smith or Denzel, they're like, oh man, they're so cool. But it's like, you don't even know them. You just see them acting like they're the people that they're acting as are cool, but you don't know them as a real person. So like, do you ever feel like sometimes when you're just managing people, you have to act a certain way and then you turn it off as a mom or as a wife, or is it, no, this is just me like literally all the time?
Well, I had to evolve and change. I thought I had to show up a certain way. And I think it was in part because when I stepped into that first executive role, I had just turned 24. I was a new mother. It was a very big stretch role for me. And I was the only female and the youngest by probably 20 years, at least for my peers. So that exacerbated a little bit of the imposter syndrome. I don't love that phrase, but it's, probably a good way to describe it. And so I showed up with that mask that I would wear at the office, in that I'm going to be all business all the time. I'm not going to show significant emotion. I am not going to be vulnerable because I don't want anyone to give anyone a reason to question me and why I've earned my seat at the table. So I actually found out a few years later that I'd been given the nickname as the Iron Maiden.
Mm.
Um, Now, I am very strong at managing businesses, and oftentimes distressed or underperforming businesses. I've never had a problem doing the really difficult performance management, having the tough conversations. But that, coupled with just never showing emotion, got me that nickname. And it's actually not who I am. So in this case, I was very different at home. My best friend has nicknamed me the turtle, in that I've got a very tough exterior. I'm extremely resilient, can shoulder a lot, but inside I'm like all soft and marshmallowy. I'm the one who like cries at the Humane Society commercials. So I had to learn to remove the mask and be very different. So now the Victoria you see is the same no matter where you see me, whether it's in the hockey arena, that'll talk good Canadian girl, playing hockey. So whether it was in the arena, whether it was in corporate boardroom, or whether you bump into me on the street, it is the same. And so I don't need to think and act differently anywhere. The only caveat I will say to that is, in the work world and meeting not just with my team, but with clients, and because I do so much speaking, it is exhausting. So instead, at the end of the day, I want to turn off. I want to make no decisions. I want to just chill. I don't want to talk to anyone.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I never really thought about that, is just the fact that you're like, hey, I've been in work mode for so long, like I just want to play. When I get home, like let me play now. I don't want to have to, make tough decisions and stuff like that. That's a pretty interesting concept that I haven't really thought about.
Yeah.
So there was another thing I was going to ask about when you said like the whole Iron Maiden thing. That's so that's something that I'm not sure how to say this exactly, but so for females trying to climb the ladder, sometimes they have a stereotype that you can be very, I guess, like the chip on your shoulder. Like you can just be excessively aggressive just because you're like, well, I'm a woman and nobody's going to trust me and nobody's going to, take me serious. But I think the females who just don't see themselves as that kind of person, and they're just like, I am equal, I'm just like everybody else, and they just kind of just do whatever they do best. I think those are the ones that end up being the most successful. And I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong. The ones that end up trying to be more aggressive might end up being more successful. But I just naturally feel like people who are more down to earth and then aren't trying as hard, quote unquote, just end up being successful. What do you think about that? Do you think that has helped you being more aggressive because you're a female, or do you feel like, no, I just do what I do?
Um, it's a hard one for me because uh, I am a very assertive person, period.
Mm,
Uh, I have, I am rarely, if ever, intimidated by anyone that I meet. But that's come with confidence and and maturity, and the experience I've had. It's given me the ability to show up, that way. I definitely think that trait and behavior of being much more assertive and more of a go-getter, challenging the status quo, has helped me. But what I would say is, I think you can still be a really successful business person, whether you choose to be in a leadership role or not, even if you're not like as extroverted as I am, or as assertive or aggressive. And I've been called aggressive, and I think some of that comes with being a woman. And I've also been called the B word a few times, that my male counterparts aren't, they're kind of applauded for, the exact same kind of language and behavior. So that is something women need to wear. But I actually think being your authentic self, one, I think being authentic, whether that's being vulnerable and emotional, or it's being much more assertive, that I think builds trust with people. And that is when people want to work with you, they want to help you, promote you, etc. So I think, long answer, yes, being assertive has very much helped me. That is just innately who I am. I do think it helps in business, but ultimately I would tell anyone to be their authentic selves.
So, what are some things that you could say, I guess it just happened in your past that probably have helped you become so confident? I would think that confidence is the root of being assertive or aggressive because it's kind of hard to be aggressive if you're not confident. And then you're just kind of crazy at that point. So, what has kind of really helped you build that kind of confidence in your life and be a decision maker?
I I'm not a fan of fake it till you make it, except when it comes with confidence. And I think in my early years, I faked it a lot. And confidence often is equated with competence.
Mm.
And so I learned that early on. So when I didn't innately feel confident, I just showed up in that way. And I recognized like the respect I received around the room. I grew into it because as I gained more and more experience in business and had more and more success, I was just confident in knowing I know what I know. This is the experience I've had. And I will say I've moved at companies every few years, and my ability to step in into significant change and transformation and seeing all these different environments and how I can adapt to it has also given me the confidence to do that. I mean, I definitely, as a 20-something-year-old new executive, it was mostly faking it to that point. Yes, I felt confident around a few things, but I will say there's one, I hit my height. I'm only 5'8", but I hit this height by the time I was 11. And, you look at the school class photos, the middle back row, me all the time. By 10, I was taller than my teacher. So I have this really like weird big person, even though I'm not that tall, but like persona. It in itself gave me confidence because I was like bigger than everyone. Everyone assumed I was older. So from a child, there was a little bit more in there innately, even just because of that.
Yeah, and a lot of people, they always have that stereotype of taller people usually get in, management positions because I guess it's like a confidence thing. You're taller than everybody, so you feel like you're bigger or whatever. But, even short people, kind of like what I was talking about with the female thing, being aggressive. Like people talk about Napoleon complex, like people who are shorter just try to be more aggressive for, it's like, hey, take me serious. But, whatever works for you. As you said, authenticity that works for people. If you're just being honest with people and not just lying to them, they'll take you serious because you're like they can trust you, and trust is everything when it comes to working with people. Is there anything that you feel like I don't know, I guess just hurt you in for a short period of time where it's like, oh, I thought I was supposed to do this, but I guess I messed up.
Oh, I've made lots of mistakes in my career. That the way I showed up from a leadership perspective, I think was one of my biggest failures. I wish I would have learned earlier that it was okay. I'd tell that 20-something-year-old girl that it's okay to be authentic, it's okay to be vulnerable. So I made some mistakes there. I've definitely made some miscalculations in business as well. I see far too many people in business have analysis paralysis. So they wait so long to get like the perfect scenario and have all the facts and the data there. And I'm very quick to move to action. I want the data, but I'm not prepared to wait sometimes for how long. And on a few occasions, that's bitten me in the ass. But more often than not, we've propelled the business forward, because of quick action. So it's calculated. I look back on that. Those have been some of my biggest. I've also made, I'm far from perfect and I've made some bad like hiring decisions, but I take great accountability for my actions, for the team's performance. But I also moved incredibly swiftly when I realized I've made some errors.
Yeah, and I would say, and again, obviously, I'm just meeting you, but I'm going to say you probably, so you want to be perfect, but you don't care about perfection. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I've strived to be better every day than I was the day before, and I'm extremely goal oriented. I sign my social media posts with unstoppable, like nothing is preventing me from getting the goal or objective. But that doesn't mean it doesn't come without failure along the way, and that I'm okay with.
Yeah, and my wife is not like that. Like she is like, if I don't know everything about this and if I can't do this perfectly, then I'm not going to start. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like nobody's perfect. So just do it and find out what happens. But she's not like that way at all. She's like, if she wants to, do whatever it is, like she feels like she has to know everything about it before she can start. And that's like what you were talking about with the analysis by paralysis. It's like you need all the data first, and it's like, no, just do it and see what happens.
Exactly. I do think, I mean, you want to be as informed as possible. I use this phrase around strategic intentionality, yet you're not in many cases going to have all, it's not going to, you're going to not have the perfect, I even tell this to people when they're talking about having children. There's no perfect time, right? Like you figure out what works for you. And same thing in business. You want to be as informed as possible, but then sometimes you just need to take action.
Absolutely. And yeah, I tell people that all the time. It's like there's no such thing as a perfect time for a lot of stuff. So if you whatever you're waiting on, you can keep waiting on it for forever. Like nothing is stopping you from waiting. So just if you just want to do something, just go ahead and do it. And then if it's successful, then boom, it was successful. But if it wasn't, then you just learned a lesson on what not to do. And so that's something that I think great leaders and great decision makers, that's what they learn over time is they've made so many decisions and taken action so many times that they've become good at that. And it's also like people who make bets, like good gamblers or poker players, they've done it so many times that it looks like they can tell the future, or it looks like they just know what's going to happen, but they just done it so many times that they're just good at doing that.
Yeah, I am not a gambler. I feel like I work way too hard for my money to throw it away senselessly. In my perspective, it's fun. Like bring $20 to do quarter slots. Good. That's like a great 30, 40 minutes for me. But I do agree. I mean, with experience comes going back the confidence to be able to make some of these decisions for sure.
Now, when you were talking about just the things that you had to do and the different positions that you've been in, is there I guess, a particular spot that you've been in, or a particular position or company that you're like, man, I really enjoyed doing that thing?
I've had many of those. I define stress from a work perspective as having accountability without authority. And so there's been more instances where I was just like, I'm not happy. I've gotten it. That's the challenge in working in some of these really large Fortune, 500-ish companies or highly matrixed companies. You've got the accountability, but you don't own all the resources or all the levers to actually deliver against it. That I've had some, however, where I owned it all. So whether it was a full market, even for a large, company where I ran end to end, everything from like this developing the strategy for the business to how we were going to go to market to the delivery, that end to end for me. And maybe that's because I'm A-type personality that likes to be in control, but the ability to influence that end to end, which I've had in a few instances in my career, including I bought a company, a technology company a number of years ago. It was very, very small, so it wasn't complex and big enough for me. But again, it was all on me. That I've thoroughly enjoyed. And I'm actually in career transition right now with a number of like things in the hopper. And when I articulate, what I'm looking for, it's much more of that kind of end-to-end robust type of role where I can also feel like I have a significant impact.
That's interesting. When you were talking about just taking on a different kind of role where it was more like on you, you said it was smaller. That's something that I was actually thinking about recently. There was a podcast I was listening to, it was a music podcast, and the guys were talking about how so it was one guy, he was a CEO of a record label or group or whatever, and they were very successful, but he said he had a friend who was telling him that there are some super talented people out there that aren't that famous. Like they only have like a few hundred followers on Instagram or whatever, but they're really talented. And the guy who owned that company was like, that doesn't exist. Like nobody is really talented but not famous. And I was like, I think that guy is really, I think he's disassociated with, I guess, people at the bottom, and that's something. Oh, I just got the like from I'm using my, but but there are people, in my opinion, who are like that, and I think that when you are it now, don't get me wrong, it's great to be associated with people who are at the top, killing it, all that kind of stuff, but sometimes you need to talk to people at the bottom because you get more information about what people need. So if you are the CEO of a company, like, you should probably talk to the people at the bottom every once in a while because you don't know what's going on. Like, you're just getting this inflated information from the managers and stuff, and you don't know if the managers are actually doing their due diligence in talking to the people who are at the bottom. So do you ever feel like you've had to do that, had to do a self check and be like, hey, how's everybody else doing, not just the people that are always in these boardroom meetings with me?
Oh, for sure. I often even do skip level meetings, meaning I will meet with the direct reports of my direct reports to get a sense. Now, I've been an executive for a long time, so I'm not always having conversations with our frontline employees. However, I do also try to do that because, to your point, I mean, the what you learn from those that are on the front lines dealing with customers every day, or the product or the service, that we're selling, is very different than what gets filtered all the way through the top. It's also why I want to surround myself with people from a either I might not have the choice of my peers, but for my team members, for those that come with very different experience and backgrounds to me, the diversity of thought that comes from different lived and worked experiences. And I want people who are going to be comfortable challenging the status quo and me.
Mm.
I've worked for one company where our CEO surrounded herself only with people who were yes people. Like, that will never be me. I want people to challenge my thinking. I want people who are confident in challenging one another. So now there's a hierarchy for a reason. The person at the top can say yay or nay. But I want that kind of dissension and conversation so we can, and feedback from frontline up, so that we can, operate the best both for our employees and for our customers, as well as, and those two together should mean for our shareholders.
Yeah, I think people forget how important that is because they think of, like, oh, if we elect so and so as the president, they're going to fix all of our problems because they told us that this is what they were going to do. But it's like, hey, we have a whole Congress to do checks and balances. We've got the judicial system to do checks and balances because one person shouldn't just be telling everybody what to do. That's called a dictatorship, and we have learned from from the issues of that. So I think that a lot of times people do forget that you don't need to have the yes men around you because that can cause problems where you have, well, a lot of people talk about like groupthink, where everybody just thinks the same. And so you don't come up with any new or fresh ideas because everybody's like, yeah, yeah, that's a great idea. I was thinking the same thing. So it can be very detrimental to a company's progress.
Yeah. And I hate hearing more than anything, well, this is the way we've always done it. Mm. Definition of insanity, right? Doing
Yeah.
the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So why are we not challenging the status quo? Why are we not thinking, very much outside of the proverbial box?
Yeah, and I think that if people try hard to just listen to other people, then over time you will develop, different ideas, different ways of thinking, and that will progress you faster than anything because you'll start to try different things. Just like I was saying with decision makers, like decision makers, when they make decisions, they learn faster because they're constantly trying new things. And just like in basketball, a lot of people say good shooters keep shooting. Even if they've missed 15 shots in a night, if they keep shooting, they might hit the right ones and get into a good stroke. So it's important to just to keep at it and to keep going because you never know what might happen. I see it in the music business all the time where
Hmm.
talented people, they just stop. And it's like, oh, what happened to so and so? Well, they just stopped making music. Well, they were never going to make it if they stopped. Quitters never win because if they quit, then they're done.
That's right.
What is something that you feel like that you had to, on that quitters and winning, what is something that you feel like you might have had to stop doing because you feel like it wasn't going to work out, and then a decision where you're like, no, I need to keep going.
I'm um I'm incredibly pragmatic. And so I have made some decisions to stop things that I didn't think were going to be I wasn't going to be as successful. So I said I was an actor when I was younger. And although I was paid not enough to make my mortgage payment. And so, it was always kind of the side thing that I did. And so I didn't pursue it. I didn't think that I was going to have a career as a famous Hollywood actor. And so I gave that up, but that was, pragmatism. And I bought my first house at 19 and had a mortgage to pay. So, part of that but at the same time, the unstoppable, I told you that I overcame like pretty significant like trauma and adversity when I was young. And I think that instilled this strong, even greater fight in me, fight or flight, like in my DNA, I'm a fighter. So I rarely give up. And if I do, it's intentionality, like the acting from, again, a sense of pragmatism. But there's been some moments where I've stuck with things that I didn't do well. So I mentioned playing hockey. Well, my ex was a hockey player, and I skated as a, my mom taught me how to skate when I was young. But I'd never had a hockey stick really in my hand. And I started playing because we could play together. And I was never the worst player on the ice. I was in the bottom third. But I kept at it because I enjoyed it. We got to do it together. And, 20 years later, I was playing at a high level, the highest level of recreational play to the lowest level of competitive because I stuck with it and enjoyed it. So that's sort of the flip side of what happens when you like continue to pursue and, whether it's passions or just, other interests. And in this case, that was one for me.
Yeah, I was going to ask, have you done anything that was very physical, maybe like as you just said, hockey, but maybe even like martial arts or something like that? Because I've noticed that people who do those kinds of things are usually their confidence level is usually a lot higher. It's something that I've always thought about is like people who are usually like really big, they're like, oh, that person's a big teddy bear. The reason why is because nobody's probably going to fight that person because they're really big. And so they can walk around knowing that, if somebody is either really strong or big or they've done martial arts, even if they're a smaller person. Like I've actually had on, I'm here in Memphis, Tennessee, and I had on a female. Her name is Amanda, and Amanda Kirkman, but she's like a black belt in jujitsu and like a world champion here in Memphis, and like she's so nice, like so nice. You would never know that she will beat the crap out of you. And the reason why is because why does she need to be mean? She knows she can beat you. So there's no point.
Yeah.
So yeah, you playing hockey and like, you probably had some physical altercations with people, maybe not fights, but you've literally had to bump bodies into people. You're not scared of the contact. You're not scared of the confrontation because you've been through it.
Yeah, yeah. And so I've always been an athlete. Shocking, as I said, I hit my height so young that I played volleyball and basketball. So those were my sports initially. And then I switched to playing hockey and I did triathlons, fitness or bodybuilding competitions. Like I've always been very athletic. And yes, it's given confidence. And even so in the hockey arena, I'm not a dirty player at all, but I've gotten many penalties, and in large part, it actually has to do with my confidence and size. Again, not the tallest, but being doing a lot of weight training, it makes me solid. Like I got a penalty off the face off because I told my winger, I'm like, I'm tying her up off the face off, and so they would come in, she would come in and sweep the puck, and I did that, but the girl facing me on the face off went down. And I've got like a penalty for that. Like, but that's again, that strength. That's although I love it because I'm telling you the story now. As well. So I do think like the team sports and dynamics has very much also helped in business.
That was actually what I was about to bring up was like I tell people all the time if I can tell when I meet you or like just being around you if you played sports in high school because that instills so many different characteristics in a person that you can just pick up. So and a lot of people who are I'm 31. I would say people my age and older make fun of the situations for kids nowadays. So like everybody gets a trophy, everybody gets an award. Well, back when I was younger, like the winner, that's who gets the award. Only so many people are getting awards or whatever. So I think that like losing, failure, that teaches so many lessons. um, Adversity that teaches a lot of lessons in life. And so when you meet people and it just seems like they can't handle losing, they can't handle failure, adversity. It's like, oh yeah, you never played a sport because if you had, you'd probably been through all this and know what the feeling is like.
Yeah, yeah, I do. There is a generational thing. I'm older than you. I'll be 48 this year. But I see it in my kids who are like soon to be 24 and then and 20 later this year, just in that they want an easy button, right? Like it's hard. You got to work hard for it. And to your point, like you're not going to get a ribbon just for showing up. Like there's effort that goes into this. And again, there's a level of resilience because you're going to lose sometimes. And we learn from that to become better and hopefully becoming, better winning team and athlete. But yeah, there's some dynamics for sure. So constantly trying to like, coach and talk to around, again, I think resilience has a lot to do with that. But I think there's this expectation for like exponential growth. And I had it at a very young age, but I also started working at 11. There was some, funky dynamics for me, but that's highly unusual. So for people who want that, it's like you put in the work.
Do you feel like there's a certain way that you like to handle people that you come in contact with who are like that? Do you feel like, some people are the suck it up buttercup type people, and then there are other people who are like, okay, this is how it is. Is there a way that we can help you through this? Blah blah blah. Like how do you feel like your style is? I guess.
Uh, mm, It depends on the person. I do adjust it for the individual. I operate with radical candor. So I will say the, things that people are uncomfortable saying, but I'm doing it from a place of care and compassion. So, maybe not sugarcoating it, but sometimes there's the velvet glove over the steel fist that, comes down. And so I will have the conversation. The other hashtag I sign off besides unstoppable is no excuses.
Mm.
And so I hold myself very much to that, but others accountable to that, in that taking accountability, we have a choice in terms of how we're going to move forward. So there's a little bit of like, suck it up, buttercup as well in some of that, but trying to also then give them the skills to learn how to be more resilient in the face of challenge or obstacles.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say maybe a learned trait that some people have to have is knowing how to deal with people that way. And instead of just telling them, you know, this is the way it is and this is how we're going to do it, you kind of have to know how to give them that why and know how to be able to um, walk them through the process of what you're thinking. You're like, okay, the reason why I'm telling you we're going to do it this way is because, and then be able to relate it to them so that they can understand it and feel comfortable in the decision that you're making. Because if people don't feel, if people feel like you're just telling them what to do just cause, then they're not likely to go along and play the game that you're doing. But if you have like reasoning, like good reasoning behind it, and like if you're able to make people understand, like, oh, okay, that makes sense, then they're probably going to even not only just do what you're asking them to do, but they're probably going to do a better job at it as well.
I agree. I think transparency is one of the most critical success factors in terms of being a really good leader. And sorry, in business, I think we want it everywhere, but very much from a leadership perspective for the exact reasons you're describing. Like people want to understand why and how is it going to impact me? What does this mean for me? How are you going to support me on that? And so one of the first, I've been through 40-ish merger acquisition or some kind of like related transactions. Those are heavy and that comes with significant change. And being able to be as transparent as possible, can't always be, but around timing, decision making, and again, impact to people personally, is very important to like successful change management.
Did you say 40-ish?
Yeah, so I've been part of 19. Actually, I realized the other day I was saying 18, but I'm like, wait a second. I bought my first company at 20. And so so there's 19 that I've been a part of, directly involved in, either for myself or for the companies I worked for directly. And then another 20 plus, I don't even know exactly, because I'm mostly in business to business professional services, have supported my clients with their own transactions, whether they're going public, they're, divesting, or they're acquiring or merging with another company. So lots. That's also given me, when you talk about confidence and some of my experience, done a lot of those things, learned a lot from it.
That's crazy. Like, so I think that people who do those things, it's very impressive just because, I mean, you said 40-ish, like five is impressive. Like just because some people aren't even, they're not even willing to start their own business, and that like they might be great at something, but they're like, I don't know. I don't know about starting my business and stuff like that. Like that's a jump in itself. Like, hey, I'm gonna start this business.
Yeah.
But to be able to do that, even at the time frame you said, like starting your own business or buying your first business at 20, like that's insane to be able to continually do that over a long period of time. Like again, you didn't just do it once and like, oh, okay, this is cool. Like you just kept doing it. And do you feel like it just got easier, or is it still difficult and you just like the rush of doing it?
Um, so three of those have been for me personally. So the first one I bought at 20 was the casting agency that actually represented me when I was acting. I built a natural bath and body works company that grew out of passion that I just turned into a business and then sold it. And then I acquired a data and analytics company back in 2017 and sold it a year later. So I mean, those three have been for me, and some of them were opportunistic. And actually, I'm looking to buy another one, but as well, not, although I probably will not run it. My husband likely will. Um, so there is a rush, but those have been very much around, again, being opportunistic. Never did I make them sort of my full time, if you will. The last one I did for a period of time is just because it was right before I was about to start at IBM, so I ran it as the CEO for a while. But all of the other ones were, again, through companies I'd worked for or clients I supported. But there is, to your question around rush, like I love being involved in those transactions because it's transformative. I am far, far from like being a status quo kind of person. I'm the type of person who'll break stuff just to almost put it back together again. And so the ability to see how these companies come together, where there are synergies, value creation, sadly, there's negative with it. Like some people are potentially impacted when we say synergy, cost takeout, like you're pulling things together. You need to do that as well. But I also pride myself in making some of the tough business decisions as well to deliver a better environment for employees, product or service for customers, and ultimately shareholder value.
Yeah, those are all great points to be able to understand that, number one, about yourself. Like you were able to understand from the get-go, like this is what I like doing. So on that topic, how many times have you been involved in a company because, as you said, the natural bath and body works, like you were passionate about it? How many times do you get involved in a company that you're actually passionate about compared to like, oh, this could make money? And I don't know if you know Cody Sanchez, but I've been listening to a lot of her stuff, and she's huge into like buying companies. She said the first company she bought was a laundromat, and it just made money. And she was like, a lot of people, she builds her fan base or whatever on what does she call it? Boring. She buys boring businesses, and it's like laundromats and stuff like that, where people don't like laundromat. That's boring. That's not sexy, but it's cash flow. It makes money.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
how often do you get involved in companies for the profit compared to I actually enjoy that?
Well, so the last company that I bought, that data and analytics company, it was actually the woman I bought it from. So first of all, when I'm a big believer in sort of organic networking as much as we might need to be incredibly strategic in how we do it. So I was coaching my younger one's hockey team, and it was one of the mums. And she and I were chatting in the arena, and we just kind of connected. And I said, "Oh, we should go for lunch sometime." And she told me she had three businesses. She was mostly in the marketing space, a full service I can't remember what the third one was. And this one was really operating as like a marketing research platform. But really what I saw was potential. I'm not a hardcore marketer. Marketing sure is reported to me, but it's not my deep expertise. And what I saw was truly just a data and analytics platform that could be used for things like employee data collection. And I'd spent a number of years running human capital businesses where we do like employee engagement surveys. So I saw this opportunity. I had been looking to buy a health and wellness business. My second marriage for me, and my husband gave up a 25-year career in the health and wellness business to move because we met on vacation. So we were long distance initially. He gave it all up. And I wanted for him to have another vocation and for him to feel like great. So I was looking for something very different. And when this one came forward, she's like, I'm looking at selling it. I'm not really sure. And I was like, wow, the opportunity with this one. I wasn't passionate about it. I just saw great opportunity. So maybe boring, maybe it's not totally boring, but still it wasn't a space I knew incredibly well. But again, I just saw a great opportunity. And I would tell people, ideally you want to marry if you're starting it, not necessarily buying companies. If you're an entrepreneur and you're building it, hopefully it's something you are passionate about the business itself because it's hard work to be an entrepreneur. I'm not a startup girl. I mean, the Bath and Body Works company was a passion that I did as a hobby that grew into a business. That's very different. But for others, I mean, it's hard work. And so I would encourage people to be passionate about it. But I actually think there's incredible business opportunities if you look at boring based upon customer need or demand, the market and its profitability. Like why not?
Have you ever been into a company and so you're starting it or not starting it, but like you start working with them and then you understand that some people in the company aren't really helping them progress? Do you have to have like tough conversations with the people who are involved?
Yeah, I'm currently I do a little bit. You have to be sort of referred into me for me to do it, but of executive coaching, and I'm working with a woman now who is a co-founder of a company and COO, and I'm having some of those conversations with her, even around the dynamic. Now, her co-founder is her husband. That's a whole other added dynamic. Um, but asking her the hard questions over like, is this business? Because it's not a business prior to starting it. It was not in an industry in a space that she'd been in previously. Like, what's your passion? Does this get you excited? Are you in it for like the right reasons? So one, but then two, also having some conversations around some of the other people she's got either reporting to her or others within the business that she might not totally, or her husband would probably have the say over whether they keep them or not. I like those conversations and the ability to like challenge people's thought process. I'll tell people like, I am going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Going back to sort of that radical candid and having spent the last many years leading in large management consulting companies, that's a little unique. Many management consultants will go and just tell their clients what they think they want to hear. Whereas I'm the opposite of that. And actually, I think that's why I'm so trusted, quite frankly. And I got a nickname from, I just left Accenture. One of the like senior execs there calls me the CEO whisperer, in large part because I'll tell CEOs what they need to hear.
That's fantastic because as you said, like you earn that trust, you earn that ability to talk to people a certain way. Like if you are dating or whatever you're doing, getting relationships with people, like you can't just go in a room and just start talking to people a certain way because people like respect. And when you can earn that respect, it feels good. Like it feels good to be able to be blunt with people. It feels horrible when you have to walk on eggshells with somebody because you you have to just be so mindful of everything you say. But when you can just be blunt and then somebody's like, okay, like that that's a great feeling.
Yeah. With compassion, though. I mean, this is where people get sort of the a-hole, like, we talk about aggressive as sort of like some of the language. When people take that approach, but don't do it from a, like, again, approaching it from a place of care and compassion. And, I said I will adjust my leadership style and communication based on the person I'm communicating with. I will say I think that's important. So be blunt, be direct, but know your audience and learn if you need to kind of couch that conversation in a slightly different way.
Now, all the things that you've been doing, Is there something that you haven't done or a company that you haven't been involved with where you're like, man, I would really like to do that?
Yeah, I mean, my ultimate goal is to be the CEO of a publicly traded company
Hmm.
one day. I've been the CEO of a small company and I've been a top executive for very large public companies, but I want the job
Mm,
one day. And the job for me will be in a CEO of a publicly traded company. That said, I am in career transition. I made the decision to leave Accenture last summer, and um, the immediate step for me will not be CEO of a publicly traded company. You need some further expertise. So I know that's not the next step for me. I'd love to go into even a private equity portfolio company, take all the M&A, all the turnaround experience I've had and do it in that setting. And there I could step in to be like CEO. Also because, my definition of success, even though still have this lofty aspiration, has changed over the years. It used to be around how high could I go, how much money could I earn, and now it really about the legacy I want to leave and the impact I can have. And so the company I do that for can be very, very different now. And I'm also maniacally focused on building the right kind of leadership teams and the right kind of culture to work in. And so I've exited companies because they weren't a fit. There was one company I left a number of years ago where I did actually on the way out, they tried to, like, after I resigned, they tried to throw a ton of money at me. And I remember saying to, my global leader at the time, I was like, there's no amount of money nor role you could offer me that would solve for our current culture and leadership crisis.
mm,
So not never say never, but if I stayed right now because you're offering me this money or a different role, I'd be a hypocrite.
mm.
So we stayed in contact and good relationship. I was recently like chatting with him on LinkedIn. Um, but it's going to be a balance for me from, in terms of the role I have that challenges me, but also in the right kind of culture with the right kind of impact that I want to have.
Is there something that you feel like you could tell your younger self that you've learned now that you're like, hey, don't do this?
Um, being myself and being more authentic. Although I learned it the hard way through some of the nicknames I heard I had. I, I wish I had started it even earlier.
Mm,
Um, I think I didn't really approach it till I was close to 30. Um, and I wish I just would have been like that right out of the gate. Probably not possible given, the youth and some of those dynamics, but I wish I could have done it. I just think like how much I've had great success, and so I have no complaints, and I live with no regrets. But I just think I would have had so much more. Like it's very freeing to operate in that way, and the like depth of the relationships that I've built are so much greater by being like this.
yeah, I think that's just step one is be comfortable in whatever you're doing. Like when I work with people, I do a lot of content creation, and so
Mm.
I do that for businesses and stuff like that. And I'll talk to the people who like might be in the video or even the people that I'm working with, holding the camera or whatever. And I'm just like, all right, first of all, whatever you need to do to be comfortable, do that first. Whatever, it doesn't matter if it's clothing, wearing the right clothes. I think it was Deion Sanders, the football player. He said, you look good, you feel good, you play good. So start off with that. And then also, just whatever needs to be around you, where if it's the right people, make sure if you don't like that person, we might need to get that person out of the room. I used to be in the Air Force and I was a bomb
Mm.
loader. And so when you load bombs, there will be people like, generals will come out and they want to watch. And if they come out and it's making somebody nervous on the crew, you can tell them to leave because you're the most important people right there. So it doesn't matter if it's the president. It's like, hey, this guy isn't comfortable. You don't want somebody uncomfortable loading bombs. So that
Exactly.
yeah, it's a big deal to just be comfortable in whatever you're doing. And so what you were just talking about, like being comfortable around the people, making the people feel comfortable, like having good conversation, like all those things are very important to just being yourself and being authentic and having creating the best outcome possible.
Agree.
Is there anything that you're working on that you're, obviously stuff that you can tell us, but that you got coming in the future.
Yeah, well, landing a job in the near future is a big one. But I'm not very good at being idle. So I used this time while I've been off to write two books. So one of them just came out a few weeks ago. It's on personal branding, which is one of the things I do attribute also a big part of my career success to. So I've written that one, and the other one is on leadership and culture. Again, as we've talked about, something that I'm really passionate about called whole human leadership, and that's my phrase for the way in which I think successful leaders lead, and more so in this very changing dynamic, the generational shift, et cetera. So that one will come out early in the summer. Um, and although nowhere in the near future, I do aspire also to being a grandmother. I've told both my children, I'm like, one or both of you will make me a grandmother. I was a young mother by choice. Don't make me a young grandmother by accident. So I Amazon my older one condoms to college when he went to college. But that's also something, again, it's not in the near term, but like I very much aspire towards that as well.
That's great. I currently don't have kids with my wife, and my mom pesters me all the time about having kids. Do-
When it's right, it's right. And I also, by the way, I sit on the board of helpusadopt.org, which gives grants to people who are looking to adopt. I'm also adopted, so there's a connection for me in doing that. So that's a way in which I give both time and money to.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Go ahead and give everybody like info on. I know you see you got books. If they need to contact a certain way, like everything, socials, whatever.
Yes. Well, the best way to get a hold of me is through my website, which is victoria-pelletier.com. I'm sure it'll be in their show notes, so I won't spell that French last name. But from there, they can choose to connect out with me on whatever other social channels they want, learn about the keynote talks I give. The two books that are currently out are on there. The third one, when it's released, will be there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. It was great having you on and all the talks of how you got into your current role and everything you're currently doing. It was awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.